Hey man, welcome back to Man Time. Today's episode, as you can tell from the card down there somewhere, what we're going to be doing today is taking a blown up chainsaw that I got in a box. The owner said he got this far and decided this was just too much of a task for him. Perfect project for me. We are going to take this saw and turn it from a box full of parts to better than new in this video. And it'll probably be a couple parts, so make sure to subscribe to catch all the parts and see this saw go from a box of junk, essentially, to a ported monster Stihl 440. Welcome to Man Time. Well, I got my box of parts over here, and I don't usually talk about this too much. Like, you know, some people might tune into my videos and say, hey, there's this guy just like working on a chainsaw, whatever, you know, let's go on to somebody's channel that we know and we've heard of and this and that. So I'm an engineer. I have a master's degree. I'm a college professor. I teach total productive maintenance, lean manufacturing. I work for manufacturing companies designing effective and efficient manufacturing systems. Process, parts, people, all that stuff plays into an effective manufacturing system. Right, so I know how to design processes to build things. That's what I do. So I'm going to show you guys the process to rebuild this saw into a better than new saw based on my knowledge of both manufacturing processes and chainsaws. So there you go. Like I said, I don't normally talk about that, but I have a feeling like some people tune into my channel and go, oh, here's just another random dude like working on a chainsaw in his backyard. And I mean, essentially that's what I am. I'm just another man working on stuff in his backyard in these videos. Oh, sorry, girl. You okay? And living life day to day. But today is a very special day because we've got a Stihl MS440 blown up piston, like missing pieces. The pieces are actually embedded in the top of it. And we are going to go through all of the steps or the process to make this saw new and great again. Better than new. I got a whole box of parts here that we're going to put on there. I'm going to go through all the steps to make this saw better than new. So, if you're new to the channel and wondering why I just took a bath, well, that's because it's Texas, and it feels like 110 until about 7 o'clock at night, and then it cools down to about 100. And then when you wake up, it's 80 and 80% humidity, and it's just hot all the time. So, I'm out here doing this in the heat of the day. If you could, maybe hit that thumbs up for me showing you all this cool stuff. But I'm going to go through this one. This is my first chainsaw in a box, right? It's my saw in a box. And I'm going to go through the same process I would go through if this saw was complete and blown up, essentially. First of all, trying to get these steel caps off. Just awesome. Oh, it's bad. It's real bad in there. So take your old brake band from your old chainsaw that threw that brake band, and what we're going to do here, the first steps are going to be to troubleshoot and try to diagnose why it failed or failure analysis. So we start with fuel. Typically when a saw blows up, that's because it's either gotten too hot or not enough lubrication from the gasoline, the two-stroke mix gas. Alright, fuel filter seems to be doing fine. Fuel line is another story. Let me get you in here and I can show you what I'm doing. But I just tugged on that just a little bit, and it see if we can show you what's going on with this thing. This is the fuel line. So that could have had a hole in it, and then it was sucking air midway up the line there somewhere. You know, so when it got down to a half a tank, it would start pulling air. That's happened to me before, and yeah, it's no fun. So right off the hop there, I think we found, you know, at least one of the problems. Another one of the problems that I saw was this right here, and this is your rim sprocket. This is what the chain rides in, or the drive gear for the chainsaw. This is an 8-pin sprocket, and in my opinion, 8 is way too much for this little saw. Now this saw came to me from a gentleman who owns a landscape and tree service. This wasn't, or at least he told me this was his personal saw. You know, so I am going to take you at your word. He has my YouTube channel. You know, I told him when I bought the saw from him that you know, I port chainsaws and fix chainsaws and stuff like that. And he said, yeah, this was my personal saw, and I mean, it definitely looks like it was rode hard, though. I mean, rode real hard. HD carb, I think I've got a carb kit for this. I think these will use like an HD10 carb kit. So the first thing I do, I check the filter, check the fuel line, and then check the carb. So that's what we're going to do. All the rest of this is just additional to what's going to happen in this series of fixing this chainsaw to make it better than new. So let's get started rebuilding the carb, and we'll go on from there. I should probably mention, going through this whole process, I'm definitely not sponsored by anybody. I don't get paid for this at all. I mean, especially from the people at like Stihl or Husky, or, you know, any brands. They wouldn't pay me, because if you were to take this to Stihl and it was blown up, which, you know, this guy probably experienced, the guy that sold it to me, the cost of all of the steel parts would have probably been in excess of almost half the price of a new saw. Let's say a new saw, this saw, like a 65cc saw, is probably $800. Maybe closer to $1,000 now. They used to be $800. I don't buy new things, so I wouldn't know. But if you were to try to buy this stuff at Stihl, it would be like half the cost of the saw itself for the parts, and then another, you know, additional to go through all this. They just, you know, they're going to tell you you need to buy a new saw, basically, if you blow up your saw, where the piston, you know, has chunks missing out of it, stuff like that. And you know, true enough, it's probably time to retire the saw after, you know, a catastrophic failure like that. But oftentimes the cylinder is repairable or salvageable. In this case, it may not be. There's some pretty big damage in there. You can't really probably see too well, but there's definitely some nicks and cuts in the ports and in the transfers both throughout that cylinder. But anyways, I don't get paid by anybody to make these videos, including YouTube. You know, I'm not in the cool kid club. That's why I thought I'd make that little introduction there and tell you about who I am, because YouTube doesn't think I'm very much of anything. So it's up to you to hit that thumbs up and subscribe, and let them know that I actually do make a pretty good video, I guess, is how it works. Or not. I mean, the fact that I have man in the title of my channel name may just disqualify me immediately. But you men out there, if you would, yeah, go ahead and subscribe. Alright, I'm going to get a razor blade, get all of the crust off of the top of this. We're going to replace everything in this carb with a new carb kit. This one looks like it calls out for a K10 HD. So that's what we're going to be doing in 110 degree feels like temperature. Man, this is the life. So you need to get all of that gasket material off of this this plate. I use just, you know, flathead, dig around. There's a little ridge like that runs all the way around there that helps it seal. And then after I get done with that, I'll run some sort of Scotch-Brite pad over it to just get it the rest of the way. The way that this gasket comes off of there tells me how long it's been since a carb kit rebuild. If it's been like, I don't know, just a couple years, it should just peel right off of there. Typically it's like more than 5 years, it's sealed on there hermetically like that, where I just, you know, start thinking I need to replace everything. And so that's what I do. Let's see here. What else? Yeah, another thing, I used to inspect, like, every single part piece coming out of there. I don't do that anymore. I just put all new parts in there and know for sure that everything is good to go. So there's a little screen right down in here, and basically that's where fuel feeds in and up and through that screen, or actually up through here and then through that screen. And then you just want to match up the gaskets to the gaskets that were in there. And you can do that real easy with these Walbro ones. They have lineup dowels, so it's almost impossible to get it wrong. That's not right. That's not right either. So this should line up, you know, similar to like what's going on here. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so it's like pretty easy to get these messed up, really. That's pretty funny. See, and then you get sweat on it because it's 100 degrees. So that's how that's supposed to look there. All of the holes kind of line up there. Holes kind of line up there. And then you've got those dowel pins. And then you just have to kind of line up the holes here. Nice. Alright, let's get this other side together. Alright, that might be a little bit better view for you there. So the bottom side of the carb, or the pumping side of the carb, as I like to call it, the valving is actually on the other side of the carb here. But this is what's called the diaphragm, and for me this is, you know, what does the pumping. But this is, I mean, it was probably working, but not really working well. This isn't what, yeah, it's not ideal. And then from here, you've got your needle seat, and then your metering lever right there. Now to check this, typically the metering lever should be lined up flush with the top body of the carb here. This one is perfect, so I'm not seeing any issues here. Also, along the way, I'm spraying out like all the orifices. So any of these orifices that have like a hole going through them, I'm spraying those out. I spray it out on this side also. And then I also take the jets out, like one by one. You can turn them in to get the number of turns out and then turn them out. I always start with a turn and a quarter to a turn and a half. Typically a turn and a half as a good, safe baseline to start with anyway. So I don't really worry about where it was initially. But that can give you an indication of, you know, failure analysis. But as far as the carb here, I'm not seeing any red flags. Like the metering lever was set correctly. The screen was clean. Yeah, fuel able to flow in there freely. Like all of the kind of basic checks are good. So here again, I just replace stuff out, right? I'll take this old stuff, I'll inspect it a little bit. Like I said, if this were 5 years ago me, I'd put all this stuff back in there. I'm just not going to do it because that seat on the needle looked fine. You know, but 2023 me is not having any of it. 2023 me is going to use every little bit of new part. Needle, seat, metering lever, the whole gamut. And the way you do this, you just set that in there. Try not to sweat too much in it. Man, if any of my normal subscribers, like I have subscribers, if any of the normal people that tune in are wondering why I don't make too many videos in the summer, well, here you go. 100, it feels like 100 at 8 o'clock. Like, I tried to start this project last night and looked at the weather and the temperature, and yeah, it didn't cool down. Because normally I do some like Friday night projects, right? Like Friday night's kind of my jam, to come out here, have a little man time, turn the camera on, fix some stuff, repair some stuff. And this was a really good project, but I mean, if it doesn't get down to below 100 until 8 o'clock at night, yeah, I'm not too thrilled about making videos. Not too thrilled about being outside in general in this kind of heat. Holy smokes. Alright. Some little casting imperfections there. That's not really a big deal. Because what's going to happen is, on here, this is going to go down first. You're going to set that on there, and then set this on here, like so. And then this goes on, somehow. Yeah, like that. So those little casting imperfections, once you tighten this down, those aren't going to matter at all. Alright, so that is carb rebuilt. We can move on to bigger and better things. Let's look at this piston a little closer, look at the cylinder, look at the bottom end, and see where we really stack up there. Alright, one thing I wanted to do before we end this part one of the video, our troubleshooting and diagnosis, is the parts you're going to need to completely rebuild the chainsaw. From what I saw initially, you can see the piston is completely gone, chunks missing, rings broken, like everything is really, really wrong with this piston, right? Jug, again, chunks missing, scoring, probably, it may be salvageable. I ordered two things. I ordered a replacement piston, but I also ordered a full new kit that includes piston, ring, jug. We're going to look at that in a second, but you're going to want a seal kit. I'm going to rebuild this saw, again, better than brand new. So that includes seals for the lower end, splitting the case. It's got two case halves, so you're going to split that apart, and this is the seal you put in between the two parts. Putting it back together. So this gasket kit came from, I think it's called like Best Supply on eBay. It was one box, full package. And the difference between this and OEM, the majority of the difference is price, right? I'm not going to get ahead by building this saw back with OEM parts. Nobody is. It's just way too difficult. Again, new parts for this probably would have been around $600, and with nice stuff like this from Italy, Meteor piston. And we can compare these side by side, but cable rings are like top of the line. These are going to be a 50 by 1.2 by 2. Two of those. Holy smokes, it's hot. But we can compare like side by side. As far as like dimensionally, these two things are going to be the exact same. You can see the tops of them line up, the bottoms of them line up. The only difference may be in the windows, and that's kind of a problem with some of the aftermarket stuff, but Meteor has always been pretty good about matching what they did from the factory. And just looking at those, the Meteor may even be finished a little bit better than the OEM one in this case. It's not always the case, but in this case that's what it looks like is going on. They include an organ plug, cylinder. So this whole kit with everything you need, minus the fuel filter, fuel line. I think that's basically the only other two parts I'm going to be missing here. But it's got the replacement jug, and just taking a look inside of the jug here, you can see, I mean, the finish and fitment on these I've never had a problem with, and that's why I'm going with a Meteor. Now I am going to try to port this, and I've seen where some people have had problems with the plating. I've worked with a few Meteor pistons. I've never had any issues, but we'll see. I'm going to, in this series of videos, take my deburr rotary tool and really dig into this plating. You can do it right here at the bottom of the transfer. The piston doesn't come in contact with that. If you were to take this and even grind down all the way to here and take the plating completely off, it really doesn't matter. So what I do, the first thing, is take my deburr tool and just start whacking at that, like hitting it hard and making sure this plating is going to hold up. But this piston, just looking at it and comparing it to the OEM, I would say it almost looks better. This is the Gilardoni Stihl versus the Meteor. Intakes look identical. Transfer ports identical. It may even be sitting a little bit lower. It looks like it's decked a little bit lower for some reason to me, which would be a good thing. That gives us all kinds of options there, opening up that intake and changing the port timing numbers on it. But just a really outstanding looking cylinder. So for all this stuff from that Best Supply, I think on eBay, again, all in one box, right? $139 versus like $600 at Stihl for all this stuff, which is, there again, really the only way to go if you're going to try to rebuild your saw. Stihl makes it virtually impossible, and there could be things you're going to run into that are going to like really set you over the limit on rebuilding the saw. So if you're thinking of like doing this for a business or whatever, you really need to be cognizant of like kind of some of the pitfalls that can happen when you're pricing a saw to somebody. Again, I don't do that. So yeah, if you were gonna like price this job out to a customer and you wanted to start a business doing this or whatever, you probably want to do like labor plus parts as your quote, right? Open-ended. It's going to be a minimum of $300 for my time to redo all this stuff, maybe $400 plus parts. So 300 plus 150 essentially, because there's additional stuff. That's $450 right there. And then if there's other things that you find along the way, that's additional, right? So you can give them that kind of baseline and then additional. But there again, if this is your saw, are you really going to pay somebody $450 plus any additional parts to fix it? Because that's what my time is worth. Might be different for somebody else, but I'm meticulous. So in this video, you're going to see a meticulously built saw. If you want to do this yourself, that's how you want to do it. So let's wrap up this part 1. All right, man. Yeah, man sweating. It's Texas. This is just normal summertime down here. Holy smokes. Hey, man. Welcome back to Man Time. Today's episode, part 2 of the Stihl MS440 blown up chainsaw rebuild. It's already broken down this far. And I've got some surprises in today's video I want to show you, and we're going to get that new cylinder on here, see how it fits, and then start taking this apart so we can split it and put in some new parts. Welcome to Man Time. Alright, so this is where we're at in our 440 blown up chainsaw rebuild, and I've got to get the clutch off of here. I've got to get the flywheel off of there. We're going to do all that stuff. But I was messing around with it, and yeah, crank. This is the first blown up chainsaw that I've got with a bad crank, where the crankshaft actually goes up and down in line with the crankshaft. That's no good. I mean, it's going to be like timing it. I can probably get away with timing it like that, just because it's a minuscule amount, maybe maybe 10,000ths of an inch, something like that. So, I mean, timing it, it's going to be like half a degree off, but I can still get the stroke and everything and lay out my port timing. The majority of the stuff I'm going to be doing in this video, taking it all the way completely down, taking the gas tank and handle off, and getting that new jug on there, new piston, showing you port timing, and then hitting the piston and cylinder, you know, with a Dremel tool or whatever kind of rotary deburr tool you got, and then getting our timing set. I did have to order a new set of bearings and a crankshaft. That stuff I got from Dukes. Again, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I've always had good lucks with Dukes on a lot of my Stihl stuff, so I just went with them. All right, let's get this on the bench, get this clutch flywheel off of there, and then get some timing numbers on it. I could actually time it just the way that it sits, right? So if you're going to time it, you don't have to pull that stuff off, but yeah, let's just stick that new cylinder on here, time it, and see where we're at before we do anything further. Oh, it's broken. Look at there. That. Oh man, I hope you can see that. Look inside of there. Can you guys see the bearing that the rod rides on is completely broken? Yeah, so right down in here, yeah, that's supposed to be one piece, and I'm seeing at least 3 pieces down in there. Huh. Interesting. Alright, so there you go. Another reason, you know, if this is something you're looking at doing full time, you may want to think about parts plus labor, again. Because the further you get in here, the worse and worse it gets, right? It's really a losing battle. This type of repair is more for the owner of the saw, or if you just want to basically give the saw away for nothing, you know, to somebody like me that can fix it. You know, that's, you know, somebody that is going to take the time to fix it right, take care of it, stuff like that. There again, if you're sitting on a saw like this, actually, matter of fact, if you're sitting on a saw like this, contact me. In my About section on this YouTube page, if you want to shoot me an email, say you got a blown up saw, you know, 60 plus cc Stihl or Husqvarna, I'll take it off your hands for you, make a video on it, fix it up the way it should be fixed up. I haven't sold any saws, so I'm not in the business of buying, selling, well, buying maybe, but selling no. So anyways, we're going to get the timing wheel hooked up. I'm just going to hook it up on the clutch side here, and we'll get that new jug piston on there. You want to make sure to time it with the gear that's going on there. One problem I'm going to have is testing the squish, because the squish is going to be forcing the piston down onto the rod, which is slightly unsupported. So I'm not going to get really a great squish measurement, but as far as like the timing numbers and stuff like that, we should get pretty close. Yeah, should get pretty close. The only problem with the saw in the box is, you know, I don't know what screws go with what, so I'm kind of trying to figure that out as I go, but we can get a pretty good idea here of top dead center, you know, without having the stuff on there. So somewhere's around here, and this is going to line up, you know, somewhere over here. So, always keep a nice little piece of baling wire around. Alright, I'm going to tighten this up and get that jug piston on here. See if I can find which screws are supposed to hold down the jug. So the way that I do this is just to get the piston on there, wrist pin through, and then slide the cylinder over. And it's easier on these Stihls to get the bolts started from the back, maybe even from the front. Let's just try with all 4 of them started, huh? I think these are them. I mean, it's the only 4 long ones. Typically the longest ones are designated for the jug, so we will hope that that is the case. Don't lose that. That keeps your carb boot open. Also, don't forget to put it back on there. I'm just going to get this boot out of my way while I'm in here. Don't want to use anything sharp as you're pushing it out of there either. But it's a whole lot easier to get this down and get it seated onto the crankcase there without this on there, and we can inspect it. Also, Stihl branding on it. No cuts, holes, cracks, and it's still nice and pliable. That's a good thing. Okay, let's get this cylinder cranked down here. Got the jug on there. Now we are going to time this without a base gasket. Man, I would like to get a squish on there. Yeah, I think I'm going to. So I'm going to try to get some squish numbers off of this thing. You want to take squish in a couple different spots, kind of all around the cylinder. And there we go. So I've already done that several times around there. That was like the 5th spot. So you want to check at the thinnest point. Oh man, 22 thousandths. Yeah, 22 thousandths. So, boom, right out of the gate, 22 thousandths. So, we're perfect. We're moving on, and we're loving life at 22 thousandths. Make sure you take notes of all your repair information. So this is going to be Stihl MS440 with the Meteor piston and jug, and the squish without the base gasket is 0.022 or 22 thousandths. Beautiful. Perfect. Now again, that's actually going to be a little bit lower than what that reading is, right? Because the crank bearing being broken on the crank, the piston is sitting down further than what it normally is. So, yeah. Okay, let's get to top dead center, which, again, we can see right through here. Right there is top dead center. I'm going to lock it in right there, and then just go back and verify with the piston stop. Alright, we are up at 46. Let's come back around to 30. So we're moving to, let's try 38. And 38. Yeah. Pretty close there, 37 and a half. 37, 37 and a bit, 37 and a bit. Okay, perfect. Perfect top dead center. That's why you always want to check with a piston stop. Nice plastic one. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's find our flashlight here. There it is. God, these black ones. Don't ever get the black streamlights like that if you can avoid it. And change your batteries out often, even if the flashlight isn't dead. Maybe set an alarm on your phone, like once a year. I've destroyed several of these, but just this back half of it here, from not changing the battery out, the batteries end up, breaking down before they actually go dead. So, all right, exhaust's opened. And this one, the light's kind of streaming out. We'll just kind of look right in here. So I've got 76, 77. Let's double check. Coming back in. Yeah, right about there. We are 77. 77. So 77. Alright, exhaust. Timing at 77 degrees, which is going to equal 154. 154 degrees duration. Alright, 154. That's not horrible, but it's not great either. And 154 for a 50cc or a 50 millimeter piston. And I think the CCs on this are somewhere around 7. They may even be 70. I think they're like 68 to 70, like a 268 basically. No, it's gonna be the same as a 372, 50 millimeter by 36 stroke. Yeah, 372. So 72. All right, right here is where our transfers are opening. And those are opening at 57. So 57, 67, 77. That's nice. 20 degrees of blowdown. Exhaust. All right. Transfers at 57 degrees equals 20 degrees of blowdown. Man, that's nice. If I liked 154, I'd be real happy there. But I don't like 154, so this is going to increase if I raise the exhaust. But that should be fine. If it ends up at like 22 degrees, I'm still happy there. I mean, right out of the box, Meteor's looking really, really nice. Alright, intake. Let's check that out. Alright, opens. Now this one actually opens on either side of the piston before it does in the middle. Yeah. So right there is where it opens at 75, right on the dot. 75. Equals to 150 duration. Now I'm going to be shooting for somewheres around exhaust to equal let's just go to 160. 160 is good, 160 is happy, 160 is peppy, and it's 72 cc's. I mean, the same recipe we use for a 372 is probably going to just transfer beautifully. So to get to 160 exhaust work is going to equal to, so we need 6 degrees, so we need to remove 3 degrees from the exhaust roof. So 3 degrees, then my blowdown is going to be 23. Blowdown is going to then equal 23. And intake, want somewheres around 150. I'm at 150 already. 150. I don't want to go any higher than like 158. So, let's just shoot for like 156 to 158. And that's going to be roughly 3 to 4 degrees. 3 to 4 off intake floor. Alright, so how do you determine how much 1 degree is? So what I like to do is like put the piston somewhere in the middle here, and that's going to be somewhere between 180 and 0, so let's just go to 90 and make a little mark. And then we'll go to 80 and make another mark. And then we'll measure between those two to get the number of, or the distance per degree. Distance per degree, that's what we're after. Alright, so I've got my 2 marks on there. I mean, just barely visible. Just put a couple little scratches. Sometimes I'll use blue Dykem or something to get a really good measurement there. So 0.112. 0.112, or right around 10 thousandths per degree. So you do 10 degrees. 10 degrees equals 0.112 divided by 10 equals 0.011. No, that's not right. Yeah, 11. So it's 11 thousandths per degree. Okay, let's get the Dykem. I've got my port timing numbers laid out in here. You can see I put some blue Dykem in there, maybe not see too well. And my video on, I think I redid a 360, basically every other video that I make on chainsaws is like detailed, like how to lay out your port work. Basically, you lay a mark in there with your calipers and then come down. In this case, it's 33 thousandths to get 3 degrees, which increases the duration, double that, 6 degrees. If I do that in both intake and exhaust, it lands me right around 160, 160. But the most important part is the plating, right? So I'm just going to come in here and start hogging out the bottom of these transfers to get that sharp lip off of there. Basically all I'm going to do there. And it's nice. I already got my diamond burr set up for chamfering. Probably grab some safety glasses and start this whole thing over. Basically what I do is just lay out blue Dykem in there on the floor of the intake, roof of the exhaust, and with calipers measure, in this case, 33 thousandths difference. And sometimes what I'm going to do is just come up to that line in the center and then blend it toward the edges. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do here. Symmetrical intake, very nice. So that's sending the charge directly through the center. Slightly offset exhaust, so I may widen it a little bit toward this side here. Definitely going to do that. But the most important part is right here, this lip and this plating. So I'm going to come in there, hit that dry and hit it hard, and we'll see if it holds up. Yeah. So right in there, I just hit the bottom of that that transfer port and just really banking it off of there to see if it's going to start chipping. It did not start chipping. It did not start chipping. So we're good to go. So that was dry. You want to use some lube, and I've got some ATF right here. I'll just dip that in the ATF and then start grinding on this of course, with safety gear, glasses, and whatnot, you got chips of aluminum going to be flying right at your face. Alright, one of the last things that I do before calling a cylinder done is go in here with some sandpaper and just all over inside the ports, dig your fingers in there where you can feel those ports, get inside, you know, especially intake and exhaust, where those rings are going to be hammering up and down against there. But transfers like everything, right? And up and down, back and forth, just a whole bunch. So I'm almost done with this one, and you can see here, you just basically take and blend down, you know, where you were porting, but you can see there, nice straight shot into the bottom of the transfers. The floor of the intake there, went around with a diamond burr tool. There's a little nick there, but that was just with the diamond burr, just superficial, again with the sandpaper. You know, cylinder's never going to notice. And then exhaust port there, and just blended it back, you know, to a flat, straight shot. Now, one thing you don't want to overlook is the piston, right? A lot of people are going to dismiss the piston, but especially with these closed port cylinders where the piston is one of your ports, right? The air is flowing through these windows and then in and up to the top of the cylinder. But I take sandpaper, go all around this, and I've ported in these windows right here. You can see some fresh grind marks there, just opened up everything. Again, just trying to make it symmetrical, a little bit bigger, a little bit more robust, and then you can see all these edges around everything, and the chamfer on the top, just sanded down everything, and that way you know everything is gonna mate and break in smooth for you, or you hope so anyway. So the last thing I'm going to do is just wipe out the cylinder with a paper towel and making sure everything is nice and neat and clean. There is a few spots in here, like on these transfers, where I did experience just a touch of the plating chipping, but luckily enough not on the floor of the intake or the roof of the exhaust. Right there is the biggest chip that I had. And the sanding hopefully will have fixed that up, but yeah, none of the spots that mattered too much, or the spots that did matter didn't have any chipping. So you know, flush it out with your garden hose or in the kitchen sink and soapy water, and just get all of the chips, dust, and then the sandpaper, you know, any particulate that might have gotten in there. And then same thing with the piston. Wash it out good, blow it out with air, and then wipe it all down with a nice clean paper towel, and should be good to go. Well, next steps in this process is going to be disassembling the crankcase, getting the tank off of there. You want to make sure to take like pictures of everything so you can make sure that it's going back together correctly. But all the things that are basically connecting this part to the metal crankcase, all these bolts and stuff have to come out. Now, one thing, if you're thinking about porting and doing that as your job, a lot of setbacks there, because all of the time that I took in porting this cylinder, that is what separates a good port job from a bad port job, essentially. The amount of time you spend with it and the amount of detail and stuff like that. Now, as an industrial engineer, that's bad. we like a stable process, right? We like a consistent cycle time. So when I put something in a lathe that's a CNC, I know exactly how long that part is going to take to come out of that lathe, right? And then you can plan your processes around that. If I got somebody on a manual lathe and I give them both the same job to two different guys, I'm going to get one with a time here and one with a time here. And now it's an out-of-control process. That's what we call it. So if you're trying to do this professionally, there's things that you can do, like when you're fabricating motorcycle frames or something like that, with a what's called a jig or a fixture, right? So if you could make some sort of jig or fixture that you stick in the cylinder, and that cylinder is going to come to you the same every time, and you can then just stick a jig in there and then lay out your port work to whatever desired numbers you want. But the problem is, you got customers that want chainsaw to run differently. You know, the port timing defines how the machine runs, essentially. So, you know, depending on what the customer wants, that jig isn't going to work for every single customer out there. It's just a mess. You know, Donnie Walker, I feel for you. He's one of the premier guys doing this, and I think he just kind of says, this is my formula, you get what I give you, you know, type of thing. You know, that's kind of the way to do it. If you can approach it like that, and you got customers that will accept what you're willing to give them, that's, you know, one way to do it. But this will always remain a hobby for me for the foreseeable future, because the amount that I would charge to go through all this wouldn't be worth it to someone, you know, who has a broken, busted chainsaw. It'd probably be less expensive to just go buy a new one, and that's why a lot of the shops won't work on them, and especially to this extent where it needs a new crank, right? A lot of the shops just won't touch it. So anyways, I'm going to see what I can do here to maybe get this gas tank off of there and then start splitting the case. Again, I am awaiting that crank, and I also ordered a set of bearings from Duke's with another set of seals, because one set of seals just isn't enough in my experience. So anyways, I'm going to try to get this a little bit further apart, and we'll kind of go from there and see what happens. So for getting the tank off of the crankcase, I'm seeing they've got these little kind of stoppers in here, and the best way to get these off of here is just from two sides, pry it up, pry it out, and then you've got a nice dirty, you know, chunk of plastic there. That gets you access right down into the screws that are going from the case into the tank. So there's two on this side. There's also a vent line right here. I popped that off of the crank side, pulled my wires through. You've also got another in-between piece here with this anti-vibe mount. Now this anti-vibe system, you know, they're still using rubber on this saw. But the rubber is, you know, a lot of times I actually kind of prefer the rubber. It's really nice and stiff, like on the 272. Now right here you've got a piece of rubber that just looks like maybe a limiter, right in between here and here. And then you've got another one here, so you got two in the front, you got one here, and then one up here. It looks like those four are kind of the only four you're going to need to get out. Alright, we've got it all blown off here. The next thing we're going to do is attempt to get the flywheel off. Now Stihl has a really nice puller that'll actually thread into the flywheel to get it off of there. And I think I've got one, I can't find it, so we're going to try to figure out a different way, you know, to get this off of there. But it's just, looks like a flange nut that comes right off of there. And since I don't need this crank anyway, normally I'm pretty concerned about the crank and the threads. Not this time around. This crank is toast. So this one is righty loosey. And what you can do here is get something like a chunk of metal. Thought I had something laying around here. Here we go. Like this old vice jaw. And set it right against the crank and the case. There we go. Get a good look at your clutch here. Now, to inspect your clutch, basically what you're looking for is these feet to pull away without any spring tension. This one looks fine. I'm going to blow that off with brake clean. What do we got under here? Got a little plate and then a bunch of garbage. Our worm gear, with a little bushing that goes inside of that. Try to keep those two pieces together. Blow that off, and then blow all this out. Now for this, since I'm not too worried about it, what I'm going to try to do is try the hammer method, where basically you have a rod and you're kind of holding on to this and then this at the same time and giving that a good whack, and we'll see if that doesn't pull it off of there. My success rate in getting flywheels off like this is I'm like 0 for 10, so I've pretty much quit trying to do it. But one thing you can do also by looking at the clutch here after you get it cleaned off is the blue. You know, the bluing on here, that's going to give you an indication how hard the saw was run also. So you can see some bluing, you know, on all these clutch pads essentially. So another indication the guy running this, you know, was using it hard like it's supposed to be used, right? It's a tool. But as a, you know, total productive maintenance professional, this isn't what I would call keeping your chainsaw in a maintainable state. And you know what I mean there is in the that's going to be too big. Where's that other one? In the book, you know, in the manual, an engineer or team of engineers in there had put a maintenance schedule, right? So every, you know, 10 hours clean your air filter, for instance. Every 15 hours do this. Every 20 hours do that. That is how you maintain your equipment to the factory standard. Oh, it actually worked. Oh man, well, there's firsts for everything still. I'm not too old to still have firsts. That's good to know. Man, us Gen Xers, we give the millennials crap, don't we? Like, get a real job, you know, YouTubing videos, doing little dances and stuff. It's like, get a real job, you know. But, I mean, some of these millennials, they make so much money doing crap like that. It's just amazing to us. We can't quite figure it out, like me making these videos. It's like I'm, you know, making very handy videos. You know, why aren't I one of these kids that makes millions of dollars on some of these videos? Hell, I can't even get 1,000 views on videos like this that are, in my opinion, extremely helpful, you know? Anyways, if you feel bad for me, and other Gen Xers like me, you can contribute through something called a Super Chat, where you donate some money to my channel, and help this Gen Xer learn a hard lesson about making videos that are never going to be anything like what a millennial's video will be. Alright, man, we have got this chainsaw back to a maintainable state. Man, the enjoyment and reward that you get from cleaning something like this out that was just caked with dirt, grease, grime. It's like 2 screws there, 1 screw there, a couple plastic pieces pop out, spray it out with brake clean, blow it out with air. Same over here. I would say this is back to what I would consider a maintainable state, or pretty close to it anyway. I mean, when you're working with something this old and a tool that gets used in the conditions that this gets used in, you know, you aren't shooting for perfection. You can't. There's what I like to call a breaking point, or break-even point, right? And for me, this is fun. This is enjoyable. This is a hobby, right? But there's only so far I'm willing to go for a hobby, right? It's a garden tool. It's just a tool that you use in the woods and around the house to cut down trees and cut firewood. So, you know, I'm only going to go so far with it, but I'm going to take it as far as I can possibly go without stepping over that breaking point, which is, you know, I need this to be a working tool at some point, so you got to know when to draw the line, right? Anyways, that's going to do it for part 2 of fixing up this Stihl MS440. In the next video, we'll get that oiler off of there, we'll get the case split, we'll get the new bearings, crank seals, you know, break this down and build it back up and put it all back together. Maybe get in some wood. That might be part 4. I don't know how many parts this is going to be, but anyways, thanks for joining me today on Man Time. Get out there, have me some man. Hey man, welcome back to Man Time and part 3 of rebuilding this chainsaw back to better than new. The last episode there I showed you the crank is completely gone. I had to order some parts. I ordered those parts. They've come in, so we're going to continue on. We're going to be doing bottom end build up with the new crank, bearings, and seals in this episode. Maybe a little bit more of the assembly. If you missed the disassembly and troubleshooting, those are previous videos, parts 1 and 2. This is going to be part 3. Welcome to Man Time. So in part 2 there, I went through basically the full disassembly to how you get down to your crankcase like this. This one is definitely more complicated than Husqvarna's or, you know, previous Stihl models. They really went all out with their engineering department on this one. I mean, this piece alone right here, I mean, this is just a couple pounds. It's amazingly light. But I went ahead and got some stuff from Duke's or Saw Salvage. The full bearing and crank kit. So, that helps me in 2 ways. One, I get the crank that I actually need, and I get an extra set of seals, which I'm probably not going to get right on the first time. This one here is going to be a real pain, because it's just a little tiny thing. One thing that I did off camera there is pull the brake band off. There's a screw right through here that holds this lower part of the brake band. You pop it out, pop it off that way, and then it just rotates around this piece here, and out, and off, and down, and out. So, now we've got access to our crank bolts. So maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's try that. Yeah, these sure feel like they're all crank bolts. Alright, T27 will get you a majority of everything you need here. T20, let's look for the dirty one. There we go. Yeah, here again, power tools. Just got to have them. Yeah, so this video is going to be a little bit more in-depth on actual disassembly, you know, for more of the beginner. When I started working on chainsaws, there wasn't a whole lot of videos out there of like actually disassembling, fixing, repairing for... at the time I was working on a Stihl 031, and if you go back on the channel, you can see all those videos. That was a garage sale find or marketplace find for $20. I got a pretty good deal on that one. I have another video out, beginner porting, where I port that chainsaw, my first chainsaw that I ported, and it actually turned out pretty good. But in the process, you know, that saw was like 50 years old. That's a 60s model, Stihl 031, and the seals were not good on it anymore. So. Anywho, we are in modern times now, at least in my thinking. This saw is probably like 30 years old, and it's a no wonder it was one of the best saws. The Stihl 044, you know, this is basically the same saw. But for the 90s, this was, the Stihl 044 was like, it beat out every other chainsaw, right? It was 50 millimeter by 36 stroke. 50 by 36 is pretty much the gold standard for a really good running chainsaw nowadays, and it was back then too. Okay, so this is a case splitting tool. You're definitely going to want one of these if you're going through this process. We have already split the case. It is split everywhere but up here in the front, but I've pulled those two. I don't think there's anything there. I think it's just being a little bit stubborn, mainly because of this here. And like I said, I think that's a lineup dowel. And what we can do here, neat little trick, is just take your knife and kind of get it worked in here. See how that opened up like that? You can do that for any sort of sealed two parts things, you know. Still sticking. Yeah, it's sticking. So there's a lineup dowel right here. There we go. That's off of there. Yeah, the bad thing about these Stihls is the proprietary bearings. You can see there, the bearing. You know, it's got this really nice chamfered smooth edge there to mate up nice with the crank, but also it houses the seal, and you can see it on this new one here. You know, it's got that big recessed lip inside of there. The 056 that I had is the same way, but they don't make a replacement for that one. And these are, again, from the Dukes, and they have an C and U indicator on them there. Now I've got my crank sitting in the freezer, and that is because what I'm going to do is heat these up. I've got my heat gun sitting right here. I'm going to heat these bearings up, and then with that crank being cold, should just be able to slip them on there. This is slightly more difficult than the other side was. But I started on the other side. There we go. Alright, there's our crank. Next thing we will do, yeah, that one is marked with the Stihl on it there. Yeah, really too bad about this bearing going out. The Duke's crank is not this good. And the reason I say that mainly is because the threads on it just don't look very good. Okay, we are there. I'm going to spray this out and get it all cleaned out. Yeah, a lot of gunk in here. Get this off, and then get all these mating surfaces cleaned up. They've been blown out. I'll need some more brake clean and some compressed air. So in all of my videos, there's one point that I always try to make, and that is paying attention to the details, right? So, for instance, all of these mating surfaces, making sure those are all completely clean. Paying attention to, like, the seal and the bearing and where everything is seated at. So you can see this bearing, it's almost, the rubber is up flush with the white part of the case here. So the actual race of the bearing, or the seal, the metal part, is pushed down just a little bit below that surface. On this one here, you can see the inside of the bearing is flush with the inside of the case. Now that's going to sit flush on the crank, so when you drive that in there, it should just go right there. But you can see here, and use this video as a reference. This is all Stihl parts. I can see Stihl, stamped on the bearings and on everything else. But this one actually, this bearing has NTN on it, so that's an NTN bearing. And it's a good thing we're replacing it out, because it is crunchy. I mean, it is, anyways. I cleaned everything out, blew everything out. Hot soapy water. I use Simple Green Crystal, which is the degreaser flavor of it. Sprayed it down, let it soak, and then hot water, rinsed it all off. You can see there, it's not perfect, but it's pretty nice and clean. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to drive these bearings out, and I typically will just drive them out the direction that they're about to go in. So from the outside in, and get a nice flat surface, where you're not going to damage anything driving it. And so I'll get a flat surface I can get those on. And you can see on this bearing, it's a little bit out from the crank, or from the case. So it's got a little bit of a lip on it there, 1/16 of an inch, or maybe even an 1/8 right there. Okay, I'm going to get these out. If you're curious how I'm going to do that, heat gun. So I'm going to heat the case, heat, and then, this one is, so this one's gotta go out that way. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is get this seal out of here. Yeah, this seal is not going to be any fun. That's for sure. I may be able to get something in behind it here to kind of drive it down. I'm going to try that. Oh, I loosened it up with that, I think. Who knows? Alright, so that's the easiest. This thing is going to be a pain. If you're trying to get this off with the crank on there, it's going to be a real pain. Okay, no damage to the case. You want to, pay special attention to that, making sure you're not going to damage the case, because this is a really small little seal. And again, it was just below the very edge of the case. So I've got to find a socket to fit down in there that I can then drive that out after I heat it up. This side here, I can just drive the whole thing out, seal and all. So I'm not even going to bother taking that seal out of there. But you would do the same thing. And if the crank was in here, this tool right here is what I use to get those crank seals out if you're not planning on replacing the bearings. You can dig it, in between your crank and the rubber there, and get under there, and then typically it's just gonna kind of pop out. Or you can just kind of wedge it out of there. Just like that. Alright, we're heated up. There we go. Got it. Alright, I want to try to get this one up to 200. We're only at 170 down here. 190 up here. 230, 220. Over there. There we go. A couple hard whacks, and it's out. Okay, so now we'll clean both the bearing surfaces for the bearings, oddly enough. Right in here, and then in that one. Now, one thing that's infinitely important is what's called error proofing, mistake proofing, or idiot proofing your process, right? So I've got, this is the old one, and just looking at it here and making sure, like, so this bearing is the one that goes right there where the chain actually rides, you know, on the sprocket. That's this side of the crank, right? So I've got this set up, so when I pull the crank out of the freezer, I'm going to set it down like that, and I'm going to have this heated up with the heat gun, and in, you know, using my right hand, set it down on there like that, and it should just slip on there at that point. But I'm going through all of that process right now, right? So using things like this pair of vice grips. Now this is just barely holding this in here because I don't want to mar the outside of this, which, you know, this Harbor Freight probably wouldn't, as hard as I would wrench down on it. But I'm just getting everything set up and practicing how I'm going to do it, so when it comes to the time to do it, I already have kind of that feel for how it's going to go down and planned, right? So, what's going to happen is I'm going to heat this up, and it's really important for this bearing in particular because it has a nylon cage, right? If you look inside of there, Stihl used a nylon cage. That's not metal, right? And so, using a heat gun is very important, and controlling the heat. You can see here on the old one, yeah, it's not good. It is not good. The cage did hold up though, and this looks like a metal cage. Maybe this one is metal too and just coated. Although I can see right through it. This looks like a nylon cage. It looks like I'm going from a metal cage to a nylon cage, which wouldn't be good. It's just hard to tell. They look like they're the exact same bearing. Yeah, really hard to tell. I can clearly see through this cage, though. That's what you get for going aftermarket, I guess. But it is nice and smooth, so there's that. Okay, one more to go. Didn't even get close. I'd like to pretend that was the first time, but that was far from the first time. So, again, attention to the details. What I ended up finding there was a little lip inside the case, So the first attempt was not successful. Anywho, another attention to the details, right? I wanted to heat up this side first because the oil pickup tube, which is somewhere around here, I didn't want to get this heated up like the case is heated up right now, so that way I can get it back in there, you know, before that way it doesn't melt the rubber, right? And then second thing, both the dowels are in this side, so I can get my gasket set on here with some sealer to hold it in place. And then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to stick this whole thing in the freezer, right? This is already pretty nice and cold. I want to keep it that way. I'm going to stick this in the freezer after I get this installed, after it cools down just a touch. And then we'll get the whole thing back together. Well, here is a definite problem. And again, attention to the detail, I didn't pay enough attention when I got this out of the box. But the end result is the gasket does not fit. Right here in the front, where it's supposed to be fitting, it does not. There's an air gap there. So, that kind of stinks. But I guess I've got a gasket for a 460 if I need one. Alright, man, we're almost there. Getting up to temperature. Just pulled this out of the refrigerator. And when your wife asks why your chainsaw's in the refrigerator, what do you tell her? Down there in the comments. Is there any right answer to that? I mean, obviously, she'll think you're crazy, but we all know why it was in there, don't we? You want as big of a, you know, temperature differential as possible, and so I'm going for above 250 here. Can get it. Oh, she's hot. Got it. Yes. All right, I should be able to snug it the rest of the way. It's darn close. Quick, get some screws in here. Let's see here. You know what? Let's just go with plan B. Alright, that's close enough to snug it up. I thought it was these bigger ones to get the screws. Yeah, it is. Okay. Trying to work quickly here. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Yeah, it's always good to have plan B and C ready to go, right? Okay. Yeah. Now we'll just go and retorque all of them here. Okay, let's see how we did. Alright, now we're tight. We are really tight. So, what do we need to do? How about if we try to go, yeah, we need to go this way. It's all the way over this way. But now the case is together. Close, not quite. Maybe one more. Pretty good. All right, man. Some lessons learned there. This plastic handle definitely gets in the way when you're putting this stuff back together. It did end up turning out okay. I was able to kind of get it in there. I mean, obviously I was able to get it off, so I knew that there was a way to kind of force my way through it. But yeah, it's important there to have plan, you know, A, B, and C. One thing I did do, I used gasket material to hold the gasket to the one side of the case. Put that in the fridge, and the reason why that is, there wasn't enough room in the freezer. That's right. And if your wife asks, it's just because you're crazy. You know, there's no right answer there. There wasn't enough room in the freezer. Isn't going to get you places. Anyways, the bottom end is completely back together. You know, runs very smooth. Made sure to get it aligned, centered in the case, pounding it one way, and then just a little tap on the other side, and we are right there, nice and smooth. Next episode, we are going to be putting in our seals and reassembly, and maybe seeing if we can get this thing in the wood. So stick around for that. I'm also going to tally up the hours, the cost of all the parts. Probably compare that to like taking it to a Stihl dealer, or you know, somebody that does this professionally, if that's something you're looking at doing. You know, how much you'd need to charge in order to be profitable. This has, again, been down for several weeks because you order a certain amount of parts that you think are bad, and then you get in there and there's more parts that are bad, and then you get in maybe a little bit further, or during the reassembly process you might find more parts that are bad, or, you know, things that you need to replace. So this is, again, what I want to be a better than new build, so hopefully we can get it to that state. Anyways, that's going to do it for today on Man Time. Get out there, have you some man time too. Hey man, welcome back to Man Time. Today's episode, we are going to finish up, hopefully finish up. There's a lot of steps involved to get from here to a running chainsaw, so we'll see where we can get to. Last episode, we got the crank installed. It's rotating really good and nice. We're going to do a base gasket delete, get that cylinder on here, get all the rest of the parts on here. We're going to look at the seals nice and up close and see which seals are better or worse compared to OEM. And then we might even talk about some cost. I'm going to do a cost breakdown at the end of this regardless, to see if it's worth it to, you know, fix up your chainsaw. Try to do this as a, you know, professional versus what they would probably charge at the Stihl dealership to do all this work for you, if they'd even do it at all. So anyways, that's going to be the episode. Welcome to Man Time. Alright, Alright, next step on this part of the rebuild here, I'm just going to go from, actually I'm probably just going to do like seals first, just to get those out of the way. I may do like one side, build it up, and then go to the other side. So on the drive side, we've got 3 different seals, essentially. And coming off this oiler worm gear, there was this piece here, and this is going to fit down like inside of each one of these. But you can see all 3 of them are very different. You've got the ones from Dukes, which are very low profile. You've got the OEM, which is bigger profile, and then you've got this Best Supplies kit one that's even bigger profile. And just looking at them here, yeah, I really don't want to use this one, just primarily because of this really short shoulder that it's got on there. And this one, I'm going to use this one because it has this nice long, I guess you could call it a shoulder, and the mating surface here, the bigger one, is going to allow it to kind of self-align a little bit better. The way that this fits into each one of them, you know, is pretty good. You can, you know, kind of test that out also to see, you know, how it's going to fit in there. The seal on the Dukes one is actually feeling a little bit better, but again, this shoulder area here, I just don't know if I can deal with that. But as a backup, that's going to be pretty good. So let's try to get this one installed. I'm going to install it on this shaft piece here, and this is really similar to like your 372. It's got the same piece on it. So let's see if we can get this installed on there. For this part of the process, I'm going to need to set the saw down, and then we will just probably find a socket that's going to fit over. Yeah, so right there, this one fits over it pretty nice. Yeah, right up against the edge of it there. So, let's get some oil on here. Oil on the bearing. Guess it's going to be on the outside, isn't it? But this way we can get it started, you know, kind of straight in there. Yeah, that's nice. It's kind of a, use that as a little bit of a lineup tool. I'm not loving that fit. I found a socket, looks like it's going to work, 13/16. Really nice all the way around. Okay, I felt it kind of coming down on this side more than on this side, so I'll give this a tap on this side. See, this would be the problem if you're going to try to use that really small Dukes one. It's going to be difficult to go in straight, where this one is kind of self-aligning at this point. And you just want to make sure the seal is all the way over this shoulder. Yeah. And it's not rubbing or touching anything, you know, with that bearing. Let's go ahead and get our oil pump installed while we're on this side. So here's the deal on what was happening here. This bearing was actually, you know, as far this way as it would go. I took that socket, pounded it back in there. The gear right here that the worm gear drives for the oil pump was stuck and not spinning. So there you can see that it is spinning freely. With this all the way torqued down, shouldn't have any issues there now. But what was, you know, alerting me to that was this right here. This thing was bound up, and you can see here as it's trying to drive in, it's spinning the gear. So if you go counterclock like that and it's not working, that's going to indicate there's something wrong with your oil pump. This O-ring up here had a little damage on it. I couldn't find anything in either of my O-ring kits that matched it. It was just a little too both, you know, it was really small and actually kind of fat, so couldn't get that to work out for me. But this is good. This is doing what it's supposed to be doing. I'm going to put a little bit more lube on here. This looks like a bronze, something that's going to take on some oil. So get that nice and lubed up. Alright, let's go through this part of the process, getting this whole clutch side reassembled here. So you've got this washer. It actually indicates top with the groove coming up like that. If that's worn off of there, the groove comes up. And being the, you know, mechanic detective, you've got, you know, 3 kind of prongs. Matches up with these 3 prongs. This one is going to be lefty-tighty, so we'll go in lefty-tighty. A little surprised there isn't more kind of dust shielding around here, but I don't know. Threads on this crankshaft again, I think are going to be kind of the weaker spot. Other than that, I mean, it looks like a really good, you know, crankshaft. It's all cast, still got casting marks on it there. And then what you can do here, if you're trying to do this without the, you know, top end on it there, stick something on the side of the crank to stop it. Grab your gun and your 19 and hold the crank against it like that. Get out any little bits that might have fallen in there, and I'm going to brake clean this and blow it out. But there we go. We got our gasket on there, clutch on there. Now the remaining parts of it are going to be your brake band, and the way that that goes on here is it kind of clicks in from the side onto there, rotates over, has a little channel that it flows through there, and then around and down into here, and then it's got a screw on the bottom of it here to line it up and in there. Get it hand started, drive it home, locking gun, put the extra torque on it. Alright, last pieces of the puzzle. So there's that arm off of the worm gear somewhere down in here. Let's see if we can find that. I was finally able to get this back on there. And the deal was the brake band had some flat spots in it. So even when it was all the way open, those flat spots were coming in and hitting on the clutch drum here. But now you can see we're all set. We need to run this around until it clicks down like that, and that means it's on the worm gear and it's spinning freely. From there we can go with our rim sprocket. Did a Stihl one, so that should fit on there perfect, and it does, and that fits. And let's see if we can get this on here. I feel blood coming. You feel it? Yeah, me too. Sometimes you can get it with a pliers. Or just any makeshift kind of tool. There we go. Nice. Okay, so that's all free. Everything's good there. We're all the way seated on that. Last thing is this. So just order of operations there. Get that brake band. Probably the order of operations would be to get the bearing on there, then this hub, and then, you know, making sure your brake band is free and all that stuff. So I think we're pretty well done here, with the exception of some plastic parts. Right, for this other seal, again, I compared OEM to the Dukes and to the Best Supplies, parts. Decided to go with the Best Supplies, just to keep it consistent. That way I've got a pair of Dukes, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. They look all pretty similar for these smaller ones. So we'll see how it goes here. There we go. Make sure it's not prolapsing. Okay, I think we got her. Yeah, it looks well seated in there. Yeah, see, now our crank is hard to spin over with those nice tight new seals in there. And it's hot in Texas. Oh yeah, the drift key. I had to go and run and get one of those because it just disappeared. I thought, maybe I'd put it in this bag, but I was taking parts in and out of it, cleaning them up, and so it may have stuck to the magnet on the flywheel, and now it's no longer. So let's get a couple things going the right way for us here, huh? Looks like oil. I was thinking about doing a timing advance on these because you always hear about Stihls really opening up, after a timing advance. So I wanted to try it, but after I bought the last flywheel key from my Stihl dealer, I am not going to do that now because this thing is tiny. I mean, really, really tiny. So it's right there. I mean, just ridiculously small. And if I drop this one, or it goes flying, if I'm trying to file it down, it's not going to be good. Not going to be good. Project ending. I mean, it's just barely sticking out of there too. There's not much for this flywheel to grip on in the first place. So I really don't want to, kind of press my luck trying to get it, to where it's advanced in the timing. If you got a chunk of steel, you can throw in there to kind of stop it. That's what you want to do. So we'll get our bearing in there. Got some lube on it. We will get our, and the way that I typically do this is I'm going to get one clip in here and then put it on there and then slide that in and then just get the other clip on afterwards. Yeah, this will be a little bit easier with the tank off of there. So get your piston. Again, we got one clip in one side. We got our bearing in there, come down, wind up, put that in there, and then we'll get our other clip in there. If there is some little scuffs from getting the rings down on there, again, you just spread those open, slide them down on there. I had a couple little scuffs, just touch it up with some sandpaper, and you're good to go. Now this part, this is where it gets a little tricky. You've got to get it in there, and then roll it in on the other side. Hold it. Nope, that didn't work. Oh, I don't like the look of that. Yeah, I don't think I like the look of that. Yeah, no, that... So what must have happened was it decompressed a little bit from the pliers, because now it just comes out of there super easy. Again, attention to the detail. Yeah, it actually bent. It actually bent from that first time trying to get it in there, and stayed bent. So Meteor, I guess you'd call them circlips or something else. I'm going to go back with the Stihl one. Now this one, the other one went flying, so this is the only one I've got here now. There we go. I'm just going to double check. Yeah, this one is completely seated all the way around. Alright, I'm going to call that good. Alright, now, we got one last spray and clean before we get our gasket on there. Same with my hands. Let's see if we can make a little magic happen. Alright, so you've got lineup dowels coming out of your piston. You've got a ring compressor, right, to make sure everything is lined up where it should be. There we go. Make sure you're all the way on both of the rings. Slide it down just a touch to where there's a little bit of the piston sticking up there. Now here is the tricky part. Okay. Got it. We have our intake going the right way. No, we don't. Alright, let's find 4 long screws. Yeah, I think these big ones are going to be the ones that we need here. Yeah, a whole lot easier getting these set and lined up without the tank on there, if you can. I'd say this is probably, you know, a good order of operations if you're doing it this way. You can just get kind of right down, you know, get the screws in there. It's almost impossible to see, but right down in there, there is that gasket material that's squished out. So I like to let that dry before I cycle the piston, and that way, I mean, it's going to come out of there. It's going to get chewed up by the engine, but at least it's one big, you know, hard piece of it rather than little chunks of it, or a smoo of it that just goes, you know, right on the piston. So I'm going to let this set up. So we've got our clutch on here. This side's pretty much all done. This side just need to get the coil on here. I'm going to put the tank on first though, so I can get the wires ran. I've got new hoses for the tank. I guess we can go through that as we're waiting for this to set up. let's pick up where we left off, getting the gas tank ready to go. Now, a couple things. I'm trying to make this, again, better than new, or at least as good as new, and, I mean, the fuel line completely shot, right? I also am not really trusting the vent line. It is pretty hard. I can't see any holes, and it's not, like, cracking when I bend it and stuff like that, but I'm not going to take any chances. I want this to be continue to be a legacy tool, right? Something that is able to be passed down. And yeah, this this fuel line just wasn't cutting it, was it? Look at that. Yeah, it's completely gone. So that'll go in the trash. I've got a new one right here. Easiest way to get this one in is the same way that I just pulled that one out. Feed it down. Lots of lube on there, of course. Vaseline is what my lube of choice is for stuff like this. Hardest part is getting this first kind of tab down, but once that goes, all pretty much downhill from there, and then it feeds in pretty nice. And these ribs on here are nice to kind of grab it and help shove it down. Next, we'll try to get this out. I don't know the easiest way to get this out. I'm guessing through. Now I've sprayed off, cleaned off, pre-lubed. Pretty much everything needs to happen here. So it looks like this is actually going to want to come in like that. Okay. Moral of the story here is just double and triple check everything. So you've got a little bit of a space on the bottom there, space on the bottom here. That's how that's going to line up. Make sure to loosen the clamp enough to get that on there, and then make sure that we're lined up here. And I'm just checking the wall all the way around there to make sure it's completely lined up, and that is completely lined up, just like that. Again, I am making a perfect tool here. A little bit of lube on there, and then we'll get these two pieces going together. So as we're bringing these two things together, we first want to worry about these wires. These wires are kind of the hardest thing, and this yellow one with the brass fitting is pretty much our biggest problem, right? Got that big round head on it. Let's grab it by the actual brass. Get it going in here. Okay. Yeah, there's a little rubber grommet just right down under here, and that's where it wants to go. And these are going down to our coil. Okay. These are hooked up. Go in the right direction. And now, bring it together a little bit further and get the rubber boot pulled through. That's through. Now we can get our vacuum line hooked up as we come together. Sometimes we need the long ones and from a different angle. Okay, that's completely on there. And then last is the boot, which feeds down and into there, and that's in there. Okay, So we got the 3 main mating keys hooked up here. Next is going to be these. Did I lose something? Yeah, I lost something. Alright, so we got some rubber on there, rubber on there. There you go. Okay, and then it's 1, 2, 3, and then 4 in the front there, and those are all those plastic looking screws. Yeah, once you get to this point, it gets really exciting. I mean, I'm down to, you know, small baggy of parts here. And shoot. See, this is where you start seeing your mistakes too in the reassembly process, order of operations. This piece here has got to come back off so I can get my plastic cover back on here. But I mean, that's no big deal. A little flathead and we're back in business. Again, attention to the detail, making sure you get this boot clamp clamped up. Here we are up here at the coil, and they say you should be about 10 thousandths, I think, off of here. But I mean, if you don't have something like a feeler gauge that's 10 thousandths to get in there, you just want to make sure you're not, like, there's no interference, right, where it's not actually hitting. We are in the home stretch here. So, yeah, that's lined up perfect. I can see that down in there. We've got our little ring here, and that holds this open. There we go. Beautiful. And then, what is it? This? I think it is. Yeah, so what you really want to be cognizant of here is the hoses going into the rubber lines, right? We got one down here we're looking at, and we got one over here, the fuel line, and the vacuum. Beautiful. Both of them are completely seated where they're supposed to be, just as Stihl has designed for us. Man, that's a nice big carb opening there, isn't it? Next step is to get our trigger assembly hooked up. That is right here. And the way to get this on and off, you hit the gas on here. It exposes where this lever seats down into the trigger. Pop that out, and then it rolls over in the back there. Yeah, so this mates up with here, and those go into there. Yeah. Okay. Alright, so that goes on, and then this goes on. This holds this to that, and these hold this to that. Does that make sense? This and that, and that and this? Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, this is a little Mickey Mouse here. This whole rinky-dink plastic air filter holder thing, but you know, if it works, it works. All right, end up finding a decomp plug. We'll get that in here, and it is starting to look like a chainsaw, isn't it? Well, the bolt for this was missing, and I happened to pick this one up. This is a Neotech chainsaw bolt nut screws, B07 KCF JP1H, and it's all like Stihl stuff, right? A bunch of really good stuff. Screws, bolts, oh man, even a seal kit, but those covers, bar nuts, bar studs, man, just everything. But anyways, this one here is the one that was missing from everything, and it just so happened to have one in there. I mean, it looks like it's way too long. It may still be the wrong one, but this is the only one that makes any sense. I can already see that I'm getting out of nuts and bolts, and all of the nuts and bolts I see here are only like what's left to be put on here. Anyways, let's see if we got spark. How about that? I don't want to get too far into this and go, oh shoot. Yeah, I can see it, just barely. Alright, so we got spark. Well, word to the wise there, this was probably my fault. That probably came out when I was washing the saw down, and yeah, now it's gone. But I mean, that's something you have to look out for too. You know, if you're buying a used saw, it's going to have stuff like that missing. Now, I'm probably just going to go to my lathe and make one, just because that's kind of how I roll. But most people aren't going to have that option. And then if you were to go to your Stihl dealer and get one of these ferrules for this top cover, I mean, they're probably just going to laugh at you. Right, I mean, not to be mean or anything, but I mean, this top cover with those ferrules from the Stihl dealer, I don't know, 50 bucks. The Stihl prices are ridiculous. If you don't believe me, just go try to buy something from your Stihl dealer. I mean, even the Husqvarna parts, I mean, it's not just Stihl. I went just to get some, a set of screws, recoil cover screws from the lawn and garden store, getting, you know, factory Husky stuff, and yeah, it was like 60 bucks for all of a 372's. No, it was handle screws. It might have been handle screws and recoil screws, something like that, though. Okay, let's see here. See if we can suck this on here. Alright, one thing I am going to do before I get this all together, there was a gasket around here. I don't know if I'm going to run that or not, but I am going to put a hole right in here. And I want it to kind of come out like centered around here. And for now, I'm just going to drill a hole, but that's where I'm going to want my exhaust exit, right there. Saw's all back together. Let's go ahead and give it a fire up. Man, this is a nice, tight, lightweight package. Alright, so I haven't tried to fire this. Let's see how many pulls it takes on choke. Already. Adjust our idle up, and maybe a little less fuel on low. I don't know. it's the next morning, and man, this saw has really come alive. I've still got some things to do. You know, I just drilled that hole in there. I'm actually going to put a pipe in it. Probably a couple more hours this morning of really the finishing touches on things. But let's go ahead and start it up. I had that first initial startup. I think it's really good to see that. It ran like crap, right? I mean, it was like I failed in what I was doing if I was to take that at face value. And that's the importance of heat cycling. I used to rebuild dirt bike engines, used to race dirt bikes, and you know, heat cycling, what I would do there is 5 minutes, and there's a, you know, written procedure for it, but 5 minutes at idle, shut it down, let it cool back off to atmosphere, another 5-minute heat cycle with nothing above like half throttle, and then basically 3 heat cycles, and then the third heat cycle you're running it, you know, up to like 3/4 and blipping it to full throttle, and then 5 minutes of that, let it cool all the way back down. I usually do at least 4 to 5 on, you know, ported chainsaws, because they're, well, I mean, like dirt bikes, right? Hot rods, running fast, running strong, a lot of RPMs there. So, but I've got a lot of work, you know, still to do, right? I found this old bar in my shed. I've got to clean this up. Took and filed it down, but we'll put a fresh chain on it here in a minute. But I'm going to start the saw up for you this morning. I think I ran through about 5 heat cycles last night, and one thing you can do to speed up that process, I've got this big fan that I rebuilt behind me. If you want to see that, I got a video on it too. But anyways, we'll fire it up first thing in the morning. Did about, like I said, 5 heat cycles, cooling it down in front of the fan in between so I could get a few done, you know, before it got too late. Oh, she's a runner. Oh man, that's satisfying. All right, so I'm going to get the rest of this stuff done. I'm going to get this bar cleaned up, wire wheel it, and make sure the channels are all good on it. Got a fresh chain to put on there. I'm going to do the muffler pipe coming out of the side here, but as you can see there, I mean, it runs fine just with a big hole drilled in it. You know, 3/4 inch hole, 3/4 inch conduit there, and we'll tack weld it up and finish out the exhaust mod. But it runs fine if you're in a pinch. Drill a big hole in it and start running a exhaust modded chainsaw, which is, you know, man, I couldn't be happier with this thing. Down there in the comments if you think that sounds like a pretty good running saw. We'll go a little bit further with it here. You know, there's several steps like this one that I'm kind of cutting out, editing for time. I've been keeping track of my time on this process and rebuilding this saw along with my spend on parts and stuff like that, so I can give you a good breakdown. I'm probably going to make that another video, but so far I'm up to almost 20 hours into this thing, and it's impossible to put out a 20-hour video, right? So I've essentially edited down 20 hours to about 2. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's edited out for time and watchability, right? This is infotainment type of stuff. You aren't going to sit there and watch 20 hours. So, but if you have any my point is, if you have questions down there in the comments, I'll answer them, and you know, hopefully you can get your saw running like this one is. Alright, man, let's get a look in here and just see, break in. If that went successful, you can see the piston right in here. Piston still clean, shiny, nice. You can see I matched the exhaust to the port, or vice versa. Match the port to the exhaust, so it's a nice smooth shot out, and piston looks minty. 6 heat cycles. What else would you expect? Here's the exhaust mod that I do for these Stihls. Just drill a hole, put a pipe in there, have it hanging out the back, and super easy to do. And then I test fit it before I drill that hole, so it goes in there, it sits right up above the dog, plenty of room there. We'll get this all bolted back together and get our bar and chain on it, see how it cuts with that on there. Alright, man, we are in the home stretch here. I did just want to emphasize one point, especially if you're referring to only this video as your reference guide. Your results probably aren't going to turn out like this, like your first go around and from one video edited down from 20 hours of stuff, right? The only practical way that you can do this successfully on your first time is experience, and doing it over and over again, it gets easier and easier, kind of. But straight out of the gate, your first saw, if this is your first saw and this is your only reference guide, be prepared for struggle and failure, basically. The more you do, though, and the different kinds of saws that you work on, it does get easier eventually. And hopefully this video can help you make it easier on the first time around. But like I said, it's something that's going to come with time and practice. I've got some yard work to do. I just got done retuning it. With that pipe on there, the low jet was too rich. It richened up on the low jet, so I had to take it down to about 1 turnout on low, about 1 1/4 on high. I'm just going to go through, start kibbling up all this stuff, and maybe we can get back to this bigger piece of wood that I have back here to test the saw with. Try it out. Should be warm. Wow. Yeah, this thing's a monster. It's just a monster. If you've ever ran a 440 or a 044, you tell me, is it better than stock? Does it seem like it's better than stock? I think just before I went into that big wood there, it kind of hit another level of break-in. As it was sitting there idling, it kind of started to fluctuate, idle. What was actually happening there was it got richer all of a sudden. I actually had to lean out in the low jet even more, so I think I'm down to like 1 turn or maybe even a little less. So yeah, that was, and then increase the idle a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, it's just running phenomenal. And yeah, I couldn't be happier with it. This is the perfect type of work saw for me. Again, if you're going to rebuild your chainsaw, I took a little bit more in depth on this one, but again, there's still a lot of stuff that I missed. So questions down below. You like this type of stuff, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up. There's a super chat if this video inspired you to do something above and beyond. You know, you can do that also. But that's going to do it for today on Man Time. It's Texas and it's summer and I'm going to catch some AC. That's going to do it for today on Man Time. Get out there, have you some Man Time too. Oh yeah, one more thing. Next video we're going to go through a cost breakdown, time versus money and all that stuff. Cost benefit analysis to doing this type of job. So if you're interested in that, that's going to be a video upcoming. We're also going to put this in the wood against some other saws comparable to the year model 272, ported 272, and maybe even a 461. I gotta go find some fresh wood, but we'll get all that done also.